Where we left off in the last video is we created the basic layout for our COVID tracker application. Our goal in this video is to populate this graph to update the Spark view with the data we get back with the national per day data of coronavirus cases. In the code, what that means is we want to get rid of this to-do item and replace it with the actual code to render the Spark chart. I'm going to delegate the work of updating the Spark chart with our national daily data into a separate method called update display with data. This will take in as a parameter the national daily data. And then I'll have Android Studio help me to create this method. So I'll hit that red light bulb and then create the function inside of main activity. Instead of calling this parameter national daily data, I'm going to call it daily data because we're also going to reuse this method for the per state data. And this is a list of COVID data, which is a data class that we had defined earlier. There are three things that we want to do inside of this method. First, in order to render data inside of the Spark chart, we need to create a SparkAdapter. Next, we want to update the radio buttons. So by default, the positive cases and maximum time range is selected. And third, we want to display the metric for the most recent day of data that we have. Let's start backwards. So the first thing we'll do is display at the bottom of the screen the metric for the most recent date. Again, I'm going to delegate the work of this into another function. I'll call this update info for date. And what we want to pass in here is a particular day of data. And the data that we want to pass in here is the most recent date. And because our data is ordered chronologically, we can pass in daily data and pass in the last element. I'll have Android Studio help us again to create this method. And we're going to call this COVID data, the parameter. So the objective of this function is to update the two text views at the bottom of the screen with the data inside of this parameter. So first is the metric. We call this TV metric label. That's referring to the text view at the bottom right of the screen. And the text attribute of this text view is going to be the number of coronavirus cases, either positive, negative, or number of deaths on that particular day. For now, because we're hard coding in positive, let's go with that. So it'll be COVID data dot positive increase. And we actually want to format this number with commas, so it's more human readable rather than just showing the raw text. In order to do that, we're going to use a convenient class called number format. So we'll call number format.getInstance.format. And the format method on number format takes in a number and it will automatically format it to include the commas and decimals. So our COVID data has a date checked attribute, which is a Java date object. We want to take that Java date object and turn it into a nice string, which looks something like May 30, 2020. So the way we'll do that is with something called simple date format. And the first parameter here is the pattern of the date. So what we care about is the month, which will be capital M's. So 3 of those letters. So for example, if it's March, it would be MAR. Then we have the particular day in the month, followed by the year. And that's denoted by the lowercase y. The next parameter is we had to pass in a locale. We'll put in locale US. And we're going to save this in a variable called output date format. Now that we have this output date format, we can use that to format the Java date object inside of our COVID data. And then this is going to be a string, which we will put into the text attribute of our text view. And we called it TV date label. Let's continue working backwards. The next step is to update the radio buttons to select the positive cases and max time radio buttons by default. This is actually very straightforward because all we need to do is specify the particular radio buttons, which should be checked. That's the attribute name to indicate that it should be selected. So I'll say radio button positive, and that is checked attribute should be true. And then similarly for radio button max. Let's run the app now and see how it looks. So you can see as soon as the network request to fetch the national daily data came back, then we execute the logic inside of the update display with data method. And that was what is updating the bottom text views with the particular date along with the metric and also these radio buttons. Finally, the last thing we'll do is create a new SparkAdapter, which will instruct the Spark view in our layout how to render the data contained inside of this list of COVID data. So I'm going to pretend like we already have the SparkAdapter class. I'm going to call it COVID SparkAdapter, and we're going to construct a new instance of this COVID SparkAdapter. And this will take in the constructor, the list of daily data that we have. We'll save this into a local variable called adapter. And now I'll tap on this red light bulb and have Android Studio help us to create this class. We'll extract it to a separate file in the same package, which is fine. We can leave the parameter name as daily data. And we can see that this file did indeed get generated inside of the same directory, same package where main activity is located. So we have this COVID SparkAdapter. This COVID SparkAdapter has to be a subclass or has to inherit from the SparkAdapter class, which came in from the open source library. So we're going to put a colon here and say SparkAdapter. And we'll need to import this. And you can see that it does come in from the Robinhood library. And now there's a red underline under the declaration, the class COVID SparkAdapter. If we tap on the red light bulb, we can see how to fix the problem, which is by implementing these three members. SparkAdapter is an abstract class, so we need to provide an implementation for these three methods. And if we tap on OK, Android Studio helps us by automatically defining these three methods with the proper parameter and return type. Because we passed in the daily data in the constructor, it's straightforward to implement each of these three methods. So I'm going to first change the daily data to be a private member variable. So I'm going to call it a private val. The easiest method is getCount, because this is simply going to be the size of the list. So because it's a one-line statement, we can use this nice feature in Kotlin to get rid of the method body and just say getCount is equal to dailydata.size. The idea of getItem is that given an index, which is a position in the list of data, we would like to return any, which means a generic object, which represents the data object at that position. So again, this is actually one line. We can just index into the list of daily data. So I'm going to get rid of the body of the function and say getItem at that particular index is equal to daily data at index. Finally is getY. And the idea here is that given a particular position in the graph, we want to retrieve the corresponding value at that position. Right now, we're only going to be graphing the number of positive cases per day. So given an index, we can grab the corresponding COVID data at that position. I'm going to put that into a local variable called chosen day data. And then our job is simply to return the positive increase, that attribute, on that COVID data. The return type of getY is a float, but this attribute is of type int. And so to turn it into a float, we just call the toFloat method. So we've defined the basic working version of the SparkAdapter. We can go back into main activity, the error goes away. And now we have one more line to write, which is we have to grab a reference to the Spark view and set the adapter property to be the adapter that we just defined. That's it. Let's try it out. When the app boots up, you can see that we are graphing now in this Spark chart the number of positive coronavirus cases nationwide over the maximum time range. And at the bottom of our application, we're showing the particular data, the particular metric for the most recent day. Now that we have the ability to show one chart on the screen, we're going to extend this functionality so that we're able to respond to changes in a radio button click. We'll do that in the next video. If you've gotten this far, drop a comment and let me know how it's going. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when the next video comes out, and I'll see you then. Bye.